Well, good afternoon, and thank you for being here today. I'm Shefali Welch, the New York City lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America, and I'm also the mother of 2 children in the New York City schools. Today we are together to address the critical issue of lockdown drills in our schools. New York State mandates an excessive 4 lockdown drills every year, more than nearly any other state in the country. And until recently, there were no guidelines around how these drills were conducted, nor consistent training for teachers. As a parent, I understand schools are trying to keep our kids safe, but forcing kids to do these drills only traumatizes them further. There is no strong evidence affirming the value of these drills for protecting our children. However, evidence is mounting on the lasting physical and emotional harms of these drills on students and entire school communities. I heard this firsthand from my 12-year-old daughter recently, who told me about the children who would cry during these drills in her classroom, which concerns her because it means they're making noise. Excessive drills increase anxiety and depression in children of all ages. And haven't our kids been through enough? I am grateful to Senator Gounardes and Assemblymember Simon for sponsoring this bill that lowers the mandate, giving school communities flexibility in the number of drills they conduct, and ensuring these drills will be conducted in an age-appropriate and trauma-informed manner. Today, you will hear from our elected officials, professionals, and parents on this topic. Now I'd like to introduce the sponsor of the Senate bill, my state senator, Andrew Gounardes.
Thank you, Shefali. Lockdown, lockdown, lock the door, shut the lights off, say no more. Go behind the desk and hide, wait until it's safe inside. Lockdown, lockdown, it's all done. Now it's time to have some fun. That is a nursery rhyme that is being taught to kids in schools today, 2024, United States of America, about how they need to prepare for their own death in a classroom. That is sickening. That is absolutely sickening. Because in our inability to tackle this uniquely American crisis of school shootings and gun violence in our communities, we have chosen, instead of doing the right thing, to do the performative thing, which is to say, let's just scare the crap out of kids and hope that they learn how to stay quiet when they hide under their desks in case something bad happens. And the data shows that that is wholly inadequate, and that is wholly ineffective. Which is why, for the last 2 years now, I've been working with my colleague in the Assembly, Assemblywoman Joanne Simon, to reform New York's excessive and ineffective lockdown drill mandate. There's a lot we could be talking about when it comes to addressing guns in our schools and in our communities. But when we focus on lockdown drills, we're actually saying that we don't want to normalize this type of behavior. We don't want kids to grow up normalizing and believing that this is just an everyday fact of life for them. Lockdown drills are supposed to prepare students for an active shooter in the event that one enters a school. But our current approach is deeply traumatizing for kids, not to mention teachers and parents, and simply not making them safer. A study by Everytown for gun safety found that excessive and aggressive lockdown drills contributed to a 42% increase in anxiety and 39% increase in depression among students. One teacher told researchers that after drills, we were in bathrooms crying, shaking, and not sleeping for months. The consensus from my friends and peers is that we are not okay. One kindergarten parent said that her young daughter immediately started having nightmares, waking up in the middle of the night and wanting to sleep with us, constantly asking if the doors are locked. It took away her innocence. And as the father of 2 young kids, I know personally that the safety of our kids is everything. But simply put, our current approach here in New York does not work. Right now, New York state law mandates that schools conduct 4 drills a year. That's more than 46 other states. And until about a month ago, there was no requirement whatsoever that any standards be used in executing those drills. No requirement that parents had notification. No requirement that students with special needs were considered as part of these drills. A month ago, the state education department, largely I would argue in response to the work that we've done with this coalition behind us, issued regulations about how to conduct these drills, and we are thankful to the education department for doing that. But now it's time for us to go one step further, to codify that guidance into state law, and also to remove the excessive number of drills that are currently mandated, to reduce it to at least 2. This would align New York with the vast majority of other states. And of course, schools would have the freedom to conduct more than those drills if they would like to. This legislation reflects nationally recommended best practices, and that's why it's supported by a wide range of health experts and gun safety advocates, including Moms Demand Action, New Yorkers Against Gun Violence, and the American Academy of Pediatrics. This is also part of a broader national trend to improve our approach to lockdown drills and make sure that they are actually keeping kids safe. Connecticut, Maine, Minnesota, Rhode Island, New Jersey, and Illinois, for example, have all recently taken similar steps. Just a few months ago, I saw a news article about a school district somewhere upstate New York where they had an active shooter drill, and they hired a company to come in wearing gas masks and modified assault rifles, walking up and down the halls of the school so that the kids could practice what to do should that happen again. We have to be asking ourselves, what are we doing if that's what we're doing? And that's why we believe so passionately in this cause, and that's why we're going to pass this bill into law this year. And so I really want to thank everyone here for championing this issue with us, and I want to thank in particular Moms Demand Action for bringing this issue to our attention and making sure that we know how incredibly important it is for us to do this. Thank you. And now I'll introduce, sorry, I forgot my cue card. And now I'm pleased to introduce my partner in the State Assembly on this, Assemblywoman Joanne Simon.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Shefali. Thank you to Moms Demand for your support, for bringing this issue to our attention, and for working with us really assiduously for the last 2 years to improve the bill, to make sure that we get out and talk to people about it. One of the things we have learned through this exercise is people have some notion that what we are doing in New York has some sort of validity in research. And in reality, it doesn't. People don't realize that, in fact, there's no data to suggest that lockdown drills at all are particularly effective. And there's certainly no data to suggest, no evidence that the number 4 is the correct number to use. In fact, there is no data for anything that what New York did in 2016. There was concern, and we understand that and we respect that, but there was no data. We now have much more information because we're hearing from schools around the state. We are hearing from advocacy groups. We are hearing from our pediatricians who are treating those young kids who develop anxiety and depression because they're undergoing those lockdown drills. And we're hearing from students. We hear from students that they do not want to take on this obligation. They want the adults in the room to fix the situation. They don't think that they should have to go through lockdown drills because we're nervous and we don't have a better way of taking care of them. That is unacceptable. We are the adults in the room, and we have to make adult decisions. And while we are not eliminating in any way, shape, or form lockdown drills, which may serve a purpose, we don't believe that a mandate of 4 is necessary or good. In fact, if they are not effective, 4 of them will only make it worse. And we know that kids react differently at different ages. And so I'm very grateful that the Department of Education looked very seriously at the aspects of the bill that created best practices, that gave guidance to schools, and incorporating them into regulations, which are still out for comment for 60 days. I encourage anybody who is interested in commenting on these regulations to do so. That's how we learn, and that's how we get the public sentiment. But we also know that by junior high school, the young people already know that the people who actually do the school shootings are primarily students or recent graduates of high schools. And they don't actually like the idea of a lockdown drill because they know that they're training the next shooter to do it in a way that will evade the precautions that the school has implemented. So we are not only not helping, we are potentially harming that situation even further. And thank God in New York, we have not had a school shooting. We are very happy about that. And we believe it's because we have strong gun laws. New York has a very low rate of gun violence relative to other states. But that's not enough. And there is no excuse for us traumatizing and re-traumatizing our kids because we're worried. We have to find a way to solve this problem that doesn't put the obligation on them. And so we are here to keep talking about this, to make sure that we have codification of the changes, many of the changes that were in the draft regulations, and that we address this mandate for 4. Remember, a mandate is a mandate. This bill will allow school districts, if they feel that there is some reason and they engage in a deliberative process, to increase the number, that we would only mandate a smaller number, which would be 2, yes? 2, and that they could do that. So we don't take away their ability to do that. But what we do is we, in fact, give them more choice. We give them more discretion to do what works in their school district instead of mandating this false number that really has no efficacy. So I'm happy to be here. I want to say that we have learned so much from parents and we've learned so much from students. We've learned from the kids that have reported their issues to us. I've learned from my granddaughter how creeped out she is by these drills and how much a lot of the kids just laugh them off. So it's not being effective, except for that 1 or 2 kids that might be somebody who might actually engage in a school shooting. We're helping them learn how to do it better. And I don't think New York should be doing that. That is not something that our state should stand for. So I want to thank the advocates again. I want to thank my partner in the Senate and the legislators, the many legislators who have signed on to this bill, because they know, and their parents, they care. Their kids went through these drills and they didn't have notification. Their kids went through a drill and thought it was real when it wasn't. We need to change that picture. We need to do this in the right way. And I'm very happy to keep fighting for this bill and get this passed this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. I'm joined here by 2 of my colleagues in the state Senate. And first, I want to call up the chairwoman of the Senate Committee on Mental Health, very appropriate, Senator Summer Brooke from Rochester.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I am here for a number of reasons and would love to explain why I felt compelled to not only advocate for this bill, but to be here today. And in large part, that is because of my position as the chair of the Mental Health Committee. When I came into this position in January 2021, I said very clearly we have a youth mental health crisis. Even our Surgeon General has said, of the United States, has said we are in a youth mental health crisis. But the next step comes from really parsing out why we are in this youth mental health crisis and what we can better do to support our young people throughout New York. And so when learning about the traumatic effect that these types of drills are having on young people, and I especially think about our youngest New Yorkers going through these traumatic experiences, right? What we are doing is these experiences will be embedded forever in those little brains. They are developing rapidly. I have a 2-year-old at home, and I think about how every single thing I do around her, every word she hears, every experience she has, will be embedded in the fabric of who she becomes. It will be embedded in the anxiety that she maybe start feeling, the depression, the trauma. And so, of course, we want our children to be safe. All of us want every child to be safe, which is why New York has some of the strongest gun safety laws, in large part due to the Moms Demand Action and so many of the advocates here today. But I think the Assembly member said it so well. It is incumbent on us as adults, as policymakers, as educators. It is incumbent on us to keep our children safe. There are decisions we as policymakers can make and do make here in New York to make sure that our child never needs to know what to do when a shooter is in their school. And I continue to work with advocates to make sure that we don't ever need to have that happen in New York State. But as we've talked to parents, as we've looked at children, we know better, and now we need to do better. We have seen the effect that these kind of trauma-inducing drills is having on our young people. And that's why I'm standing here today, because there is a better way for us to do this. There is a trauma-informed way to do this while still keeping our children safe. And so I think as much as we think about how to keep our children physically safe, which I know all of us want to do, it's my most important job is keeping my child safe and happy. Her physical health is important, but her mental health is important as well. And we know how much those are tied in. So that's why I'm a proud supporter of this bill, and I support Senator Gounardes in hoping to get it passed this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Brooke. And now I also want to call up and introduce my colleague, Senator Leah Webb from Binghamton. Senator Webb?
So I will keep my comments brief. I want to thank Senator Gounardes and, of course, Assemblymember Simon for their work in bringing this bill forward. I remember vividly the debate we had on the floor last year during session with regards to this bill and some of the stories that colleagues shared, and even for myself, reflecting on my time prior to being in the Senate as an educator in higher ed, these conversations around active shooter drills and what this does, as it has been mentioned already, to the mental health and also the sense of safety. And the reality is that we should never have to normalize school shootings, that it is imperative that we continue as a state to strengthen our gun safety laws for all the reasons that have been mentioned. I want to thank Moms Demand Action for their, I would say, unapologetic, unequivocal advocacy, and everyone who is part of this effort, because we know in real time that these kinds of exposures have long-standing impacts. You know, we know that as a state, we have to continue to invest resources for the academic success, but also the social integration that our children need to learn and understand. And so having repeated exposure to things like this unfortunately creates a pathway to normalize these kind of actions. And so, as has been said, it is imperative that we have policies that shift us in a direction that improves the quality of life, that reduces these kinds of incidences from happening, to ultimately eliminating them, not just in our schools, but across our communities. And so again, I'm here not just as the chair of women's issues in the Senate, but also as a concerned community member that understands, alongside everyone here and those who are supporting from afar, how important it is for us as a legislative body to support policies and practices that improve the health and vitality of our communities overall. Thank you all so much for being here. And again, thank you, Senator Gounardes, for your continued leadership on this important issue.
Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Matt Spiro, the Senior Director for Government Affairs at the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Matt?
Good afternoon. My name is Matthew Shapiro. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs for NAMI New York State, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I'm here today because NAMI New York State is very concerned about New York's future, our youth. As someone who has struggled with mental health issues and mental illness since I was 3.5 years old, I know what it's like to be a student and go through school with living with a mental illness and stressors. But I didn't have to deal with a fraction of the negative factors that our current generation of students are dealing with, whether it's social media or having to worry about shooters. Our students are seriously compromised, and while trying to help them, as our senators and leaders have said, we don't want to do more damage than benefit. So we are very concerned about how New York State and our schools handle these lockdown drills. And as Senator Baruch said, it's so important that in ensuring that our students are safe, that we're also addressing their overall wellness, and that includes their mental health. So We do want to see less of these drills. We want to make sure there are safe spaces where students can talk about these experiences afterwards. And these experiences are validated and they're given the support that they need. Our students today have too many factors coming at them that are compromising their mental health. In trying to do good, we shouldn't be doing more harm. So we really applaud Senator Gounardes and Assemblywoman Simon, and of course, our mental health chair, Senator Baruch, for being so active in addressing these issues and really ensuring that we address the whole wellness of our children and genuinely keep them safe. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Glenn Liebman, the CEO of the Mental Health Association in New York State.
Thank you very much. Thank you for great. Really glad to have the opportunity to talk about this incredibly significant issue. So my name is Glenn Liebman. I'm the director of the Mental Health Association in New York State. We're an organization comprised of 26 affiliates in 52 counties. But at the state level, we're involved in a lot of advocacy, education, and training issues. And that's why this issue is so important to us. First of all, we really want to thank Senator Gounardes and Assemblymember Simon for their leadership in introducing a bill that we believe is a common sense response to the trauma being faced by young people in New York. We are very well aware of the need to protect our children. We know they're our most valuable resource, but we also have to measure that with the need to protect them from the consequence of the impacted trauma and the associated mental health issues that are often driven by the drills. We are in a youth mental health crisis in New York State and across the country. Numbers are staggering. Sadly, we saw an uptick around depression, anxiety, and suicide attempts before COVID. Now that COVID has been here, it has existed, it's exacerbated that trend with a shocking 1 in 6 high school students seriously contemplating suicide. Just think about that, 1 in 6, it's just incredible. In New York, we're doing something about this through the leadership of Governor Hochul and the legislature. We need to do even more, and the passage of this common sense legislation will be part of the effort to stem this tide. The impact for trauma, we talked about it, and everybody who spoke made a really great case about what have we done in New York to measure this. Well, we've done some national studies. There have been some national studies. In 2021, a study from the Georgia Institute of Technology was found that after drills, young people experienced a 42% increase in stress and anxiety and a 39% increase in depression, as well as a 52% increase for anxiety for school staff also. One of the parts of this legislation that is addressed is around the notion around families and the impact of families. They need to know when drills are happening. They see the consequences of the drills firsthand when their loved one comes home and their symptoms are prompted by the drill that occurred that day. Families need to be engaged, and we are pleased to see this in the legislation. We again thank Senator Gounardes and Assemblymember Simon for their leadership in introducing legislation that is part of the movement to reduce the anxiety and depression that impacts young people. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for having us. I'm also with the Mental Health Association in New York State with Glenn Liebman, but I'm the director of the School Mental Health Resource and Training Center. And so that's exactly what we do. We provide resources and training to schools on mental health. And when we think about this bill and took a look at it, we are thrilled to be here because it really is and focuses on children's mental health first. And that's what we all need to be doing. And we're so thrilled that the legislature, especially Senator Gounardes and Assemblymember Simon, but thank you for everyone else who supported it too. Because some of the highlights of this bill are important because at our Resource and Training Center, what we hear is we hear people, families, and community organizations as well as schools telling us that they are not informed when their child when they participate in a school safety drill in schools, and they come home and they feel like they're not prepared. When I say they, I mean parents are not prepared to address the needs of their children. children who have pre-existing conditions or mental health issues or not. So what we like is that this bill requires, and as Glenn mentioned and others have mentioned, it's just common sense. And so we're so thrilled to see it in the legislature and going to be signed this year and put into law. I'm absolutely sure of it. That we want to say that thank you for including parents to be informed first, number one. Number two, and also to have the option to opt out. And so that is really a key part of this legislation for us. And also that what's requiring schools to really look at explaining age appropriately what the safety drills and really focused on students with disabilities. So thank you for taking all those steps to make this bill right, because that's what we really need to do. And we do appreciate, and I know others have talked about it, that the State Education Department, too, is talking about amending their proposed regulations on school safety drills. And the thought that the legislature and the State Education Department and the Board of Regents are talking about trauma-informed practices and using and conducting the school safety drills in a trauma-informed approach is really, really key to making our children's mental health number one. First. So thank you very much for having us, and we really appreciate the partnership.
Thank you very much. First of all, just want to say it's just nice to be around all this group of people. Sometimes you feel very alone in this fight. Yes? And so you're all very much superheroes to me, so thank you for your support with all this. So I appreciate that. Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Andrew Shanik. I'm a professor of school psychology at the College of St. Rose, still. I'm also past president and on the executive board of the New York Association of School Psychologists. As school psychologists, we are very concerned about keeping our students, faculty, and staff safe in school environments. It has become evident over the past few decades that even the most precious to us, our children, can be targeted by senseless and indiscriminate violence. We must take action to ensure that our schools are safe. However, the methods and strategies that we use to protect our schools must be designed to address the psychological as well as the physical safety needs of our students and staff. That is why the New York Association of School Psychologists support the work of Senator Gounardes and Assemblymember Simon. The bill calls attention to the importance of conducting emergency drills, including lockdown drills, but also to need to foster psychological safety by providing critical training to school staff and consideration of the impact of high sensory drills on students, especially those who have special needs and impacted by trauma in the past. While one of the primary goals of crisis preparedness is to develop a sense of empowerment and control, poorly conducted armed assailant drills may cause physical and psychological harm and negatively affect the overall learning environment. It is critical that administrators, school-employed mental health professionals, school resource and police officers, crisis response team members work closely together to develop staff and student training programs that follow the best practice considerations for these types of drills. Available research supports effectiveness in non-sensory lockdown drills, such as drill done by calmly walking and talking through the procedures with no simulation of real-life events. Especially with younger students, we recommend avoiding highly sensory drills that involve simulation activities that mimic real experience, as they can be traumatizing. The National Association of School Psychologists, in collaboration with the National Association of School Resource Officers and Safe Sound Schools, released guidelines to be on armed assailant training entitled Best Practices Considerations for Armed Assailant Drills in Schools. This document provides guidance on factors that schools must take into account when conducting armed assailant drills. It reflects unique considerations within the school environment, including protecting both physical and psychological safety, and we can make this available upon request. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. My name is Robert Mertfeld. I'm a dad of 2 young children in the New York City public school system. First of all, I want to thank Assemblymember Simon and Senator Gounardes, and particularly their staff, for all the excellent work that they have put into making this bill a reality. Secondly, it's wonderful to see the mental health associations coming out in full force at this press conference, next to the initial support that the bill gained from the gun control prevention groups and parent associations, and as well the pediatricians. My comments to you here today are very short. I just want to communicate 2 main points. Number one, it's been 25 years since Columbine happened. If we are passing this legislation now and we're introducing best practices for lockdown drill, it's long overdue after 25 years after the system has been in place. And the question that I want everybody to ask themselves, where will we be in 5 years? Where will we be in 10 years or in 15 or in another 25 years, 50 years after Columbine? The second thing is New York is a national leader on safe learning environments and student dignity. It should be absolutely normal for the governor, for the mayor of my great city, New York City, for the lawmakers to think of this legislation as best practices for safe learning environments and student dignity in New York State. I thank you on these points, and I hope that the bill will get through this legislative session. Thank you.
And our final speaker will be Jody Rumfola with the New York State School Social Workers Association.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Rumfola, and I'm a school social worker in the Rochester City School District and a board member for the New York State School Social Workers Association. I'm here to enthusiastically support this bill, which considers the needs of students and staff. Studies have shown that school lockdown drills, as they are currently performed, dramatically impact a child's state of mental health. Studies show increases in depression, anxiety, stress, and an overall increase in psychological problems. Other studies indicate that there's little likelihood of children retaining important information from these drills. This bill provides 7 days notice prior to a school drill, which allows students' support systems to prepare them. It allows parents and guardians to have conversations with their students before and after the drill to process it. For staff, it gives times to prepare students, which may include defining language such as what is a drill, and connecting practice to other skills that are practiced, such as writing, playing an instrument, or playing a sport. For students with special needs, they can be introduced to and practice the use of equipment to be more comfortable during the drill, such as noise-canceling headphones to quiet alarms for a child with noise sensitivity. The training for staff will incorporate trauma-sensitive practices and skills into classrooms, helping everyone through drills, especially those with a trauma history. These changes to drill implementation will reduce stress levels for our students and staff overall and increase drill effectiveness. Thank you.